Hey there, Dan. I hope you're doing well. Eric and I are taking some time this week to look at the drafts that have come in for SA3 and giving some screencast feedback. And I just had the pleasure of reading your draft. And so now I get to go through and kind of talk about what's working well and give you some suggestions that you might think about as you're revising this week before you turn in the final version of this next week. So all in all, really excellent job. I think that you're demonstrating very solid comprehension of the ideas in chapter 3, and your application to Jake's situation is really impressive. And so you have done a great job on this. Any advice that I give is just going to help you bring it up a little bit more to that next level. So let's go ahead and just dive in. So looking at your intro, I think you kind of jump into the essay, the letter very quickly. And by the end of this first paragraph, we get your position, we get your thesis, which is that you are going to support the idea that Jake should go back to nursing school. And so I think that you set the stage effectively there. You make it very clear to Jake what you're going to be arguing for through the rest of the letter. And then you introduce your primary source, which is Eric's book, where you're going to be pulling a lot of your evidence from. And you dive in with Electrode Man. And I actually think this works pretty well because one of the most important concepts that someone like Jake will need to start differentiating between or understanding is that pleasure is not the same thing as flourishing or self-actualization. And so I think that this paragraph works really well to help kind of draw Jake into thinking about the idea that I'm experiencing pleasure, but that might not be the same thing as flourishing or reaching my full potential. And so I think that the way that you concisely summarize what Electrode Man is all about, and then you apply that to Jake through asking him these kind of rhetorical questions, I think works really well. So that's all I said in that comment, is that I think it's working well. And then you go on to introduce Mill. Integrating this quote that Eric says that you will ultimately be happier if you choose to seek high quality pleasures. Absolutely true. Definitely worth applying this to Jake's situation. My comment here is that I would suggest stopping right after that first sentence and really taking some time to summarize for Jake what high and low quality pleasures are. So remember, Jake hasn't read any of Mill, and he may have a hard time trying to understand what you mean by high quality pleasures. And so, yeah, Eric and I understand what you mean. But for this hypothetical audience that we're dealing with, this college-age student, how would you distill Mill's ideas down? How would you capture those ideas or summarize those ideas or teach Jake what high versus low quality pleasures are? Okay, so you'll want to slow down in this section, really take some time to flesh that out. Once you've done that, I think you can dig into this next part here where you say you sound happy at the resort, but if you believe Mill's argument, then you could be even happier, okay? So that's where we move from summary to application, right? Where we're gonna say, now that you understand the difference between high and low quality pleasures, let's sort of think about how it applies to your current situation. My suggestion here would be to slow this down a little bit more too and help Jake really see how the resort life reflects the idea of low quality pleasures. So how is it that his experiences at the resort are really low quality, right? So he's much more like Electrode Man when he's at the resort, right? He is getting the experience of being in the sun, serving drinks, being around people when they're partying and they're happy and they're chatting it up with him. And that's all very much low quality stuff, right? I mean, it's great. It feels good in the moment. But I think after you make that point that right now he is purely indulging in low quality pleasures, then you could go on to say, yeah, you sound happy at the resort, Jake. But if you believe Mill's argument that there's something more out there, you could be even happier. So it's kind of like you're giving him a concession. Yes, Jake, you are experiencing pleasure, but it's that low quality kind of pleasure that I've just described. Let's consider now, Jake, what nursing school has to offer and how that could really set you off in the direction of these higher quality pleasures that could result in more happiness. So I think you have the skeletal structure here, and I'm just sort of encouraging you to flesh it out a little bit, right? So just add a little bit more to really add some persuasive weight to this argument for Jake. And then you move on here to talk about how nursing school is going to be a challenge, but that the payoff is going to be greater, which is exactly what a high quality pleasure is. And so I think you start off really strong here. You did an excellent job of integrating this quote, citing this quote, and then letting Jake know that, yeah, this is going to be hard, but Jake, if you want to experience those higher quality pleasures, you need to push yourself to become a better person. And I love these little concrete examples that you give. Along the way, you're going to learn more about yourself and other people. You're going to become better trained in helping people, some of whom maybe experience the toughest time of their lives. And so, yeah, so you're helping people now, Jake, but it's a very different kind of helping, right? You're helping people attain their own low quality pleasures. Imagine what helping feels like, Jake, when you're helping people at the toughest time in their life. I mean, that just comes with its own reward. And so I really like how you tease that out a little bit. And I love this last sentence here. This version of Jake is one that can help those people through those times and to find comfort. That's the kind of self-actualization that Jake seems to be yearning for in his letter that he's written to the ethics guru. I mean, he is sensing his reason, as you point out later, is already indicating to him that there's something more out there that he should be striving for. Okay, and that's where you move into Socrates. You do an awesome job of summarizing the charioteer metaphor. So I guess that's kind of what I'm asking for up here with Mill, is just as you help Jake understand the charioteer metaphor before applying it to his situation, do the same thing with Mill. Make sure he understands high and low quality pleasures, maybe the concept of fecundity, before you actually dive in and apply it to his situation. So you do that really, really well here. This is fantastic. You dip back into Jake's letter to show him, Jake, you're already getting signals from your reasoning. Your reasoning is already trying to help pull you back from this kind of appetite indulgence that you're sort of experiencing right now. And so, yes, so it's just a perfect application. And honestly, it's not something that students often do or pick up. I think that, that idea that you can go back into Jake's letter and actually pull out things that he said to help support your argument. And so really nice job doing that. Right now, Jake, your spirit, your willpower, it's not strong enough. Your appetites are pulling you back into this resort job. The simple pleasure of your work at the resorts has emboldened your appetite. It's working to pull you away from something you've always wanted to do. I mean, that's just awesome. I could not have said it better. I think that's just fantastic. That is exactly what's going on here. And I love how you just make that really clear to Jake. And then you let him know, here's what you need to do, Jake. You need to strengthen your willpower so that you can attain the greater happiness of becoming working as a nurse. Fantastic. Solid paragraph. I think the only suggestion here is that you might hammer this home. You might drive this home with a line or so at the end that kind of reiterates why Socrates believes we need to not just indulge in our appetites, right? So why is it worth it? Socrates would say that, this is how we're meant to be as humans. This is how we flourish when these three things are in balance. If we're just letting our appetites run wild, then essentially we're living an unhealthy life. Our psyche is going to be unhappy, unhealthy, out of control. If we really want to experience that calm and that sense of meeting our full potential, full flourishing, then our psyche has to be in balance. And so I think just indicating something like that at the end of this paragraph will help Jake see why it's kind of worth it in the end. Again, I love this tone here where you're just having a conversation with Jake and you're trying to be very friendly in the way that you're guiding him toward your claim. Yes, Jake, you're enjoying giving right now, but you're actually capable of giving so much more. And so pulling in the Shankar Vedantam research, these really fascinating results that we are hardwired as biological creatures to give and how we find pleasure in that. I think that that's a really nice piece of evidence to pull in Think of the pleasure you find today from delivering a pina colada and compare that to the potential pleasure you would find from being a nurse. Wouldn't that be worth your commitment and effort to attain? Really nicely said. Solid conclusion. I think you're just reinforcing the concepts that came up throughout the whole essay. So all in all, Dan, really excellent work. I think you could turn it in as is and do fine on this essay, but I also think that you could work on some of these revisions in here and really kick this up to the next level. Excellent comprehension, excellent application, just such a pleasure to read. So thanks for putting the hard work in. And hopefully you're feeling a little bit of high quality pleasure right now, a little bit of payoff for all the work that you did on this essay. You deserve to feel that. So nice work. And I look forward to seeing your final draft.